Welcome back to another baseball focused video. The big day has come and gone. The first day of the 2026 MLB Draft. The final day one pick was announced about 2 hours ago from the start of this video. We're 4 rounds through the draft. Still got 15 rounds to go on Sunday. But obviously, we know that the big storylines come from day one, your top prospects on day one. I'm going to jump into some of my key takeaways, some of my key initial reactions, going over some of my favorite picks, some of my favorite classes thus far. Leading up to this draft, I've already been on the record stating that this is my favorite draft class that I've covered. This is my third one I've covered. It was kind of funny leading up to the draft. I kind of panicked on my draft board and I kind of just like completely revamped the thing like 2 days ahead of the draft. I just, for whatever reason, I was looking down my board and I just didn't like what I was looking at. And I completely revamped it, moved players up and down. My final product was far more different than it had looked earlier in the process. But I did like how it turned out compared to what the first round ended up looking like. Like I've said, with how deep this class is, not necessarily talent wise, just as deep and as tight as it is, you probably could have made a case for the top 100 players on my. I only ranked 115 players. I think there was a case to be made for the top 100 players on my board to go in the first round. That's just how tight this class was, and that kind of proved that kind of proved to be the point in the first round because you did have some surprises, some guys that really pushed up into the first round that otherwise were considered second, third, maybe fourth round type of guys. So we're going to jump in, talk about these picks. I'm not going to spend too much time on each one. I do want to at least gloss over each one, give my 2 cents, but not spend too much time on each pick because I do want to get into these second, third, fourth round picks as well. But mainly talk about the first round because that's what I've been projecting throughout the process is the first 40 picks. Your top three picks, Chalowski, Emerson, and Lackey. Not much of a surprise there. It was really just going to come down to a matter of how were they going to order themselves. In my final mock draft, which was, I think I released it last Sunday, so 6 days before the draft, which probably wasn't wise because a lot can change in between that time. But I had it ordered Chalowski, Emerson, Lackey, which was my order in my last three mock. I did 4 mock drafts in my final three. That was the order. If I had released it a day later, I might have bumped Emerson up to that number one overall spot because he did have like I think he had become like on betting sites and whatnot. I think Emerson had become the favorite. Not that I'm going to listen to betting sites, but it did kind of feel like the consensus started to lean towards Emerson, which kind of made sense to me because Emerson is kind of more of a profile the White Sox like in the draft, especially in the first round. But I think Chalowski just ended up being the safe bet considering he's been the first overall wire to wire guy and also has the extensive high school track record as well. So I know that we were often talking about the prospect fatigue with Chalowski. When you have a guy around this long as the number one overall favorite, you're going to try to poke holes in the profile. I've said time and time again, you just really can't do it. And can you really talk yourself into passing on a guy like that has just been the favorite for this long? I know the upside of Emerson, but for a college shortstop to be doing what Chalowski has done, and for him to have been the favorite, I don't know if you want to move off of that pick. I do hold strong with my pick of Chalowski, and he ends up being the pick, which leads Grady Emerson to being the second overall pick to the Rays. This pick kind of enamored me for a long time, dating back to when the Rays had gotten the second overall pick in the draft lottery at the winter meetings in December. We always talk about Chalowski being the number one favorite dating back to the beginning of this cycle. Emerson has been the wire to wire favorite to be second overall as well. I don't think we've seen that where the first two picks were as they were projected from the beginning of the process until the day of the draft. I don't think we've had both top two picks remain the same. When I first so Emerson was the favorite then. I knew that Emerson was the favorite then. But I was kind of looking at it thinking, the Rays are going to try to get cute with this pick. The Rays try to get cute with everything they do. And leading up to the draft, it sounded like they might get cute with this pick. I know that, you know, dating back a couple months, there was a lot of steam with Tyler Bell at this pick. The Rays picked Tyler Bell in the second round of the 2024 draft. He didn't sign. He gets to Kentucky. Apparently, the Rays and Tyler Bell were very familiar with each other. And Tyler Bell doesn't turn in his medicals at the draft combine, so the Rays were going to be, if they drafted him, they were going to be able to sign him to whatever they wanted to. They wouldn't have to meet that 75% threshold, which would allow them to really save money later down the board. I think the Rays have the third, yeah, they have the third, or I think after the Pirates traded that 34th overall pick to the White Sox, the Rays did have the second highest bonus pool, I think. So they were really going to be able to cash in on some guys. They don't go that route with Tyler Bell. And then also last night, Friday night, there had been some rumors picking up that the Rays were interested in Jackson Flora, which was really surprising to me because the Rays haven't picked a pitcher with a top 100 pick, I think dating back to 2018. I'd have to check on that. But the Rays just historically don't take pitchers high up in the draft. They really trust in their ability to develop pitchers, so it's not a matter of them having to identify talent in the draft in order to do that. And I just didn't see them passing on Emerson, considering Emerson is pretty much, it's the exact profile they target in the draft, and he's the best player from that demographic. He's probably the best high school shortstop that the Rays have ever had the chance to pick. So I just didn't see them passing on him, regardless of how the financials worked out. And then that leaves Lackey at the third overall pick to the Twins. The Twins were probably just going to pick whoever was available of those three. They weren't really linked to anybody outside of that top three. So Lackey being the pick to the Twins at third overall doesn't come as a surprise. Jackson Flora to the Giants at fourth overall. Not much of a surprise either. Flora was the pick here for me kind of throughout the cycle. In my last mock draft, I did have Jacob Lombard going here just because he was probably the player that had been linked to the Giants the most at this pick. They end up falling back on Jackson Flora. Jackson Flora, local to the Bay Area. Fun pick there. I've been on the record saying I think and I don't think the consensus agrees with me either. I think he's the best college pitching prospect since Paul Skeens. You could look back to Chase Burns. I think Flora was better than Chase Burns at the same stage. Obviously, in hindsight, Chase Burns, pretty good pick there for the Reds at second overall in 2024. I still do think that Jackson Flora has the ceiling of an ace, so I love this pick for the Giants. Derek Curiel going to the Pirates at fifth overall. I don't call it a surprise because Derek Curiel was like a fringe top 10 guy, I would say really throughout the cycle. He came into the cycle probably as a top 10. He kind of fell out of that range for me. I mocked him to the Brewers at 26th overall in 3 straight mock drafts. It was more so the fact that he didn't really tap into the power that we were wanting him to really solidify himself as a top 10 pick. But when I dug into the profile, regardless of the fact that the raw power didn't show up, it's consistent game power because he just always finds the barrel, and he might not be getting into really good raw EVs, but at the same time it's consistent hard contact just because it's such good swing decisions, it's such good feel for the barrel. Then you add on the athletic upside and the defensive upside onto what he brings to the table offensively, and he kind of climbed back into that top 10 range for me. And I had him 10th overall to the Rockies in my last mock draft. So a guy jumping up 4 spots doesn't come as much of a surprise. It comes as more surprise in this range of the draft than it does in the back of the first round, because then the class gets a lot more muddy from there. I felt like Derek Curiel's ceiling was 8th overall to the A's simply because I thought Flora, Jacob Lombard, Eric Booth, and Drew Burris were going to fill up 4 through 7. I didn't really see anybody else getting into that range. And so I felt like if the A's were really bought into the profile of Curiel, they were going to take him at 8th overall because I was pretty sure he was going to be available there. So that was kind of my ceiling for Curiel. But like we've seen in the draft, anything can happen. The big thing with the Curiel pick that kind of set the tone throughout the rest of this day one is that teams are really valuing bat to ball skills, which I love. And I think we've seen in recent drafts that the players with the most success in pro ball are the ones that have that laid a pretty solid foundation of contact skills in amateur ball coming into pro ball. You're much more likely to get success from a player, in my opinion, if they come into the draft with polish already, with the contact skills, with the swing decisions. Then you get him into your pro organization. Then you add the power from there. I think we're seeing that's more so the recipe of success than just taking the loud tools, which was kind of the strategy for a long time. Now I think we're shifting kind of back towards the contact skills, the swing decisions, the polish, maybe the defensive upside on top of that. The Pirates for me were coming away with either Flora, Lombard, or Booth Jr. Flora's off the board, so for me it was a no doubter. They were getting either Jacob Lombard or Eric Booth Jr. And the reason being is you look at their recent drafts, they are not afraid of taking the high risk, high upside high school guy. Jacob Lombard kind of fit that perfectly. That profile is almost a carbon copy to Connor Griffin's in 2024. I thought Jacob Lombard was the slam dunk pick here. They don't take Lombard and they take the bat to ball artist in Derek Couriel. You're looking at a team like the Pirates, not afraid of taking that high risk, high upside guy with a lot of swing and miss in his game, and they take Derek Couriel, who's the exact antithesis of that profile. And that really set the tone for these teams valuing bat to ball skills. So that's why Derek Couriel here at 5 kind of comes off as kind of the first surprise. I put in quotations because he wasn't ranked far off that pick, but still kind of the first surprise of this first round. And that leads right into the 6th overall pick to the Royals, Zion Rose. This was the first real big surprise. Zion Rose, he definitely had some buzz late into the cycle. For me, he was a kind of like a comp round, early second round type of guy. I could see him getting into the teens in the first round. There were some analysts on the record saying, don't be surprised if Zion Rose goes higher than projected. I didn't disagree with that. I could see him going higher than what I projected him as. I didn't see him going 6th overall. I wasn't necessarily bought into the profile of Rose. I wasn't bought into the swing. He was already playing a corner at Louisville. There is athletic upside in there. He's a good runner. Not a great arm. I think in the right organization, he can get developed into a center fielder. But for him, it was more about the offensive profile. It was, a good blend of contact skills and power. Like I said, not bought into the swing, but it was enough for the Royals to take him 6th overall. My problem with it is that they take him over Drew Burress, who Drew Burress is, simply put, in another tier over Zion Rose. Regardless of the savings you might get from this pick if you're the Royals, I just can't be talked into it. I can't be talked into taking him over Drew Burress. Eric Booth Jr. was also on the board. Can't be talked into that. But I do say all that to say, I will be happy to see how I'm proven wrong with this opinion in a couple years. So Zion Rose, great player. I wouldn't have taken him here. Just interested to see the development path the Royals take with him. Eric Booth Jr. to the Orioles. They continue their track record of taking bats in the first round. I think it's 2018, the last time they took a pitcher, which was Grayson Rodriguez. The Athletics get the biggest steal within the first 10 picks, at least, in my opinion, with Drew Burress falling to 8th overall. Drew Burress is a guy I would have considered with the top 5 overall pick. He manages to slide all the way to 8th overall. The Braves taking AJ Gracia at 9th overall. Fan of this pick as well. Gracia, one of the most polished bats in the class. Excellent blend of bat to ball skills and power. For the Braves, it's the first college bat they've taken since they went with Shea Langoliers in 2019. I might have been the high guy on AJ Gracia because I feel like this was actually the right range for him. I think a lot more mock drafts and draft boards had him closer to 20 than 10. Tyler Bell gets to 10th overall to the Rockies. I might have taken Bell over Gracia, but still feels like the right range for both of those players. Hakopian at 11th overall. I've been on the record stating that this is the best bat in the draft, so I think the Nationals got some very good value there. Was ranked 7th on my draft board. And then Jared Grindlinger at 12th overall to the Angels. This was another surprise for me. The Angels historically are taking the fastest moving college guy available on the board. Prior to this pick, they hadn't taken a high schooler with their first round pick since 2018. You get John Mozeliak taking over the front office as an interim. I think it was my most recent mock draft. I stated that even though you have a new GM taking over, I don't see an overhaul in draft strategy. I think that there has been a foundation laid out over the course of however many years Perry Minasian was in charge. I don't see an interim GM coming in and completely overhauling it in the first couple of weeks of taking over the job. I want to say about a week prior to the draft, you started to hear Jared Grindlinger's name pop up with this pick, which I just didn't believe it, mainly for the reasons I just mentioned. But they surprised me. They take Grindlinger here, first high schooler since 2018, two-way, and also the note on Grindlinger is that he's the youngest player in this draft. He was 17.2 on draft day. He just turned turned 17 like a month ago. So it's almost the opposite of what they have taken in recent drafts. They did take him as an outfielder. He was a two-way, the best two-way in this class. So they draft him as an outfielder. Doesn't necessarily mean that they won't try him as a two-way. They obviously prefer him as a hitter over a pitcher. I do like to see the Angels making a drastic change in their strategy, considering simply put, the failures of that front office. When it comes to taking the college guy and fast tracking him the way they did, I didn't hate it, but at the same time, it just didn't prove to really work, and they just kind of did it time and time again. I mean, it worked with Zach Neto. Zach Neto has turned into a very formidable big league shortstop. It took a couple years to get him to that. Other than that, the strategy just simply hasn't worked. So I'm excited to see the Angels take a different route and just kind of see the development path of Grinlinger, considering just how young he is. Trevor Condon going 13th overall to the Cardinals. I like this pick as well. Felt like the right range for him. More on the high end of his range, but like it nonetheless. The thing that kind of surprising about Trevor Condon is that he goes before Jacob Lombard. Jacob Lombard slides all the way to 14th overall to the Marlins. Jacob Lombard was pretty consistently ranked as the next best prep behind Grady Emerson, and he ends up going behind Emerson, Booth, Grinlinger, and Condon. So Lombard is the 5th prep off the board, which comes as a bit of a surprise. And it kind of goes back to my point of teams valuing bat-to-ball skills. Jacob Lombard, he has legitimate swing and miss questions, despite the fact that he's arguably the highest upside player in this class. With that being said, I think the Marlins do get some pretty good value here. The Marlins have prioritized some power bats in the draft since Peter Bendix has taken over that front office. So I'm very interested to see what type of game power they can get him into, if they can iron out those swing and miss concerns. I did have Lombard ranked 14th on my draft board, so I feel a little bit better about being the low guy on him, but still just immense upside considering the athleticism. He's a slam dunk shortstop. He's got plus raw power. It's just, how much is he going to hit? So I actually do kind of love that pick for the Marlins, considering the upside value there. Ryder Helfrich ends up at 15th overall to the Diamondbacks. Helfrich had some serious helium as a top 10 guy, so like that pick for the Diamondbacks. Gio Rojas, first prep pitcher off the board to the Rangers at 16th overall. Absolutely love Gio Rojas. It really took me right up until draft day, essentially, to really get bought into Rojas. I mean, I was watching highlights of him the other day. I'm like, why have I not been higher on this guy? I've kind of had him ranked in the 10 to 15 range. No, actually more so the 15 to 20 range throughout the cycle. I bumped him up all the way to 8 in my final update. So with him getting to 16 at the Rangers, I like that pick for them. I don't think there was any doubt that he was going to be the first prep pitcher off the board. Logan Hughes at 17th overall to the Astros. This is a very Astros pick. They like guys that can hit, and they're not afraid of risk either. Not that Hughes is a risky bat. It's a risky profile in that there's nothing really to lean on outside of the bat, so he's kind of going to have to hit to live up to the 17th overall pick status, but I do think that he's going to hit. I think it's one of the most well-rounded bats in the class. So very Astros pick there. Justin LeBron was one of the biggest question marks in this draft. He comes into the cycle as a kind of a dark horse to go number 1 overall. Just never really finds it at Alabama this year. Just continues to struggle with swing and miss, continues to struggle with breaking stuff both in and outside of the zone. The defense took a step back, but still almost like the college version of Jacob Lombard in a sense. Just immense upside considering the athleticism, the strength. There was a wide variety of landing spots for LeBron. I think that him getting into the top 10 was kind of out of the question at this point. And there was also questions on whether he was going to be a first rounder, because I think he hit like 230 this year. Batting average is, are we calling it a useless stat at this point? I don't know if I would say that, but batting average doesn't mean much in MLB front offices. But at the same time, first round picks are good enough to hit 300 at the college level. And so you just don't see guys with that low of a batting average going into the first round. So LeBron had a very wide range of outcomes in this draft. Lands at 18th to the Reds. Another pick that I'm just kind of interested to see how it plays out. Liam Peterson at 19th overall to the Guardians. I actually really like this pick. I actually had Liam Peterson outside the first round in my final mock draft, which probably came as a surprise to anybody who read that. I really like the stuff on Peterson, but it was the inconsistencies throughout his junior year at Florida, his struggles with finding the strike zone. I'm not bought into the delivery or the mechanics either, but it's top tier stuff. If he was going to go within the top 20 picks, I think the Guardians would be the team I would most want him to go to, because the Guardians develop pitchers. They're known for getting pitchers to improved command. That's really what it's going to take for Peterson is, can he get to average command at least? And then from there, you're talking about ace upside considering the stuff. So I kind of love Liam Peterson getting to the Guardians. He wasn't a top 20 pick for me, but kind of like I said, it's like I think this is his best path for his development, is getting into that Guardians system. 20th overall, Jake Schaffner out of North Carolina to the Red Sox. I would probably say it's a bigger surprise than the Zion Rose pick, because Schaffner was, for me, he was like late second round, early third round guy. That kind of felt like his safest landing spot. Gets all the way to 20th overall to the Red Sox. He did have some late helium in the cycle, especially with his strong showing in the NCAA tournament and at the College World Series. I've kind of said you can't go wrong with the bat-to-ball shortstop. That's Schaffner. It's the question is he going to be able to stick at shortstop because of the arm strength? How much power is he going to get into? So it's really not a profile the Red Sox have really selected. Last year they had the string of college pitchers. A year prior they went Braden Montgomery, college bat, but a vastly different college bat than Jake Schaffner. You're talking about a corner outfield bat with power upside. Jake Schaffner is comfortably a hit over power bat, could end up at second base. And then you look at what they've taken in the high school class, Marcelo Meyer, Mikey Romero. Those were more, I would say, slam dunk left side of the infield guys with power upside. So it's a very surprising profile to see the Red Sox in on. It's also not a pick that I hate, because like I said, you kind of can't go wrong with these types of profiles, hit over power guys, and it kind of just goes back to the point. These teams are valuing bat to ball. They're valuing contact skills, they're valuing swing decisions, and it's something that I really love. So don't hate that pick, Jake Schaffner to the Red Sox. Padres at 21st overall, they continue their streak of taking prep pitchers. I think of the last three drafts, I think this is my favorite of their first round picks. It was Cash Mayfield in 2024, left-handed prep, Cruz Schoolcraft a year ago, another left-hander, and then they go Borthwick. Borthwick was the consensus top prep right-hander. I had Ethan Watchman personally. Borthwick, I think, was ranked, I want to say he was ranked second or third as far as prep right-handers go. But I do love this pick for the Padres. I think it's a safer pick than their last two. I mean, Borthwick, power right-hander with physicality already, good feel for spin, throws strikes. This kind of felt like the range for Borthwick, and it was hard not to see the Padres cashing in on one of these prep pitchers. I feel like Brody Bumilla would have been the pick here had not the injury news came out about a week prior to the draft. So another pick I really like here in the first round. And then Cam Flukie at 22nd overall goes to the Tigers. I was really convinced that the Tigers were going to take one of these left-handed prep hitters. So what they've taken in the past, there was plenty available in this range. Landon Tomey, Cole Prosek, Bo Lawrence. They end up snagging Cam Flukie, who, I mean, for me, I think this kind of ended up being a matter of, okay, we have these guys that we like, but Cam Flukie is available here. Let's just take the best player on the board, which is Cam Flukie. Cam Flukie was a potential top 5 guy coming into the season, and then the rib injury sidelines him for most of his season, which causes him to slide, which I've been on the record before saying injured players have the best value in the draft. You think about Cam Flukie's injury. Cam Flukie already had an extensive track record of success. We knew what the stuff looked like. We knew what the strike throwing looks like. Then he gets this injury, which is completely unrelated to his arm. So it's not a matter of, okay, we are worried about the injury risk on his arm. We're worried about the health of his arm. So he misses a significant part of his season at Coastal Carolina. Does come back at the end of the season, shows that he's healthy, and then he slides this far. You kind of look at this case and say, maybe injured guys have the best value in the draft. So Cam Flukie at 22nd overall is some of the best value in this draft. So good on the Tigers for grabbing him. Cade Townsend goes 23rd overall to the Cubs out of Ole Miss. He was outside the first round for me in my last mock draft. I kind of had a hard time finding a spot for him late into the cycle. He kind of broke down a little bit at the end of the season. Wasn't necessarily an injury. I think the workload was too much for him at the end. He didn't pitch in the Super Regionals or in Omaha for Ole Miss, which was kind of crazy to me considering he was probably the best pitcher on the Ole Miss pitching staff. So he was kind of interesting case for me. I was really interested to see where he might land. 23rd overall to the Cubs. I think it was pretty apparent that the Cubs were taking a college guy, whether it was a bat or a pitcher with this pick. Ace Reese at 24th overall to the Mariners out of Mississippi State. Another interesting one, not a profile the Mariners select. They do really like pitchers. They also like prep bats. A. Shreese, obviously, neither of those. Maybe kind of a case like Cam Flukie. It's like, okay, this guy is available here. Let's just take the best player on the board. Let's not overthink this. A. Shreese, in my last mock draft, I had him 27th overall to the Mets. I was a little bit lower on Reese just because the contact skills and the approach kind of backed up this year. He's also a little bit positionless. He's probably not going to stick at third base. He's probably going to be a first baseman. I am still really bought into the swing from the left side. It is some excellent raw power. He has shown bat-to-ball skills in the past. Like I said, kind of a matter of the Mariners kind of going away from their typical strategy and just saying, hey, there's this guy's available. Let's not overthink this. Let's take this guy here. The Brewers take Trey Ebel, 25th overall out of Corona High School. They took his brother, Brady Ebel, a year ago. I think it was 32nd overall. So they take the Ebel brothers in back-to-back years in the first round. I was actually one of the high guys on Trey Ebel. I didn't see him getting into this range in the first round, but I do love it from a Brewers standpoint. I mean, the Brewers identify well, and they are not afraid of taking guys higher up in the draft that are not projected there. I mean, I think you got to think back to like Braylon Payne in 2024. Wasn't a first-round guy for me. They take him in the first round. Really like the defensive upside on Ebel, the bat-to-ball skills. I think it's a player you kind of can't go wrong with. 26th overall, this is the second pick of the draft. The Braves PPI pick, 26th overall. They get Carter Beck. This was kind of another, I would maybe call it a surprise. Indiana State outfielder, kind of undersized, one of these motor guys, well-rounded profile, can run, can play center field, can hit for some power, can hit for contact. Just a well-rounded profile. For me, probably second rounder. I think I had him ranked in the 50s or 60s. Braves get him here at 26th overall. Carson Wiggins, 27th overall. This is definitely the biggest surprise of the first round. At the beginning of this video, I said that there might have been a case for every player in my top 100 to be in the first round. Carson Wiggins wasn't even on my top 100. Carson Wiggins wasn't even considered for my top 100. Reason being, he missed his entire season at Arkansas. I just said injured players have the best value. Not necessarily in this case. He had Tommy John a year ago, misses his entire junior season at Arkansas. Never started a game at Arkansas. He threw in 14 games in 2025 in his sophomore season, all out of the bullpen. Doesn't have hardly any innings on his arm at the college level. Has never started a game. Coming off of Tommy John. Gets to 27th overall to the Mets. The stuff is legit. They're buying the stuff here. Do I hate this pick? I actually don't hate this pick because a healthy Carson Wiggins is a first-round caliber talent. I am always for teams taking shots on guys that they really believe in. And I can see why the Mets believe in Carson Wiggins here. The stuff is legit. He has shown some feel for the strike zone when he was healthy a year ago. Fastball has been up over 100, has some serious feel for spin. I don't hate this pick. I just don't hate it. I know it's the biggest surprise. I can imagine Mets fans in all of their misery. Who did we take in the first round of the draft? And they look up his stats. Oh, he's pitched 14 games in college baseball. So I can see why that pick might not go over well, but not a pick I hate. Like I said, I really like when teams take shots on guys that they believe in. And Carson Wiggins, there's a lot of reason to believe there. Also going to save the Mets some money, for sure. Jack Radell, the pick at 28th overall to the Astros, one of the highest floors as far as pitchers go in this draft. Late into the cycle, it became more apparent that he was going to be a first-round guy. Gets into the first round as the 28th overall pick, the PPI pick to the Astros. 29th overall to the Giants, you had Carson Bolemon. There were periods throughout this process in which Bolemon was the top prep pitcher, so depending on who you prefer between Bolemon and Rojas, the Giants might have gotten the best college pitcher and the best high school pitcher in this draft. The only reason he slid as far as he did, there was some injury risk there this season. I think he missed about half of his season in South Carolina because of injury. And then when he came back, the velocity had backed up just a little bit. So some injury risk there, but I'm still really bought into the breaking stuff and the strike throwing. Like the value here for the Giants at 29th overall. At 30th overall, you had Taylor Rabe out of Ole Miss. I think one of the big questions was, out of that two-headed monster at Ole Miss, Taylor Rabe and Cade Townsend, which one was going to go first? Later into the cycle, it seemed like Taylor Rabe might be the guy. I think he actually probably would have been the favorite to go over Cade Townsend. They're only separated by 7 picks. Taylor Rabe goes 30th overall to the Royals. So the Royals get Zion Rose and Taylor Rabe with their first 2 picks. Kind of a surprise that they don't end up with a high schooler with one of those first two picks. 31st overall to the Diamondbacks, you have Blake Bryant, right-handed pitcher out of the state of Georgia. I did have Coleman Borthwick to the Diamondbacks at this pick in my last mock draft. I thought that given the Diamondbacks' history in taking prep pitchers, I thought one of their first-round picks, they would end up with one of them. And it was more likely to be this comp pick. They end up with Blake Bryant. I wouldn't say a consensus top 5 prep right-hander just because that class was so deep. You probably had 20 different guys you could consider as a top 5 prep right-hander in this class. Blake Bryant definitely had some consideration in that range. Like this pick for the Diamondbacks. Tegan Kuhns gets to 32nd overall to the Cardinals. Feels like the right range for him. I also was on the record saying the Cardinals are not leaving their first 2 picks without getting a college arm. They get Tegan Kuhns here. 33rd overall to the Rays. Taj Marchand. These two were linked to each other as closely as Grady Emerson and the Rays at 2nd overall were. So didn't come as a surprise that Marchand gets here. Landon Tomey, 34th overall to the White Sox. This was the pick that they traded for on Friday night. Landon Tomey, he was heavily linked to the White Sox, especially after they did acquire that pick. Son of Jim Tomey, kind of cool that he gets to Chicago. 35th overall to the Yankees. Their first pick is Hunter Dietz out of Arkansas. This is one of my favorite picks of the draft as well. Kind of in the same light as the Liam Peterson pick to the Guardians. The Yankees are one of the best at developing pitchers, especially college guys. The Yankees have historically liked their big physical college pitchers. Hunter Dietz was my second highest ranked college arm on my board. He ends up being the 9th college pitcher off the board and the 12th pitcher overall. He was my 3rd highest ranked pitcher, 2nd highest ranked college guy. I absolutely love the value that the Yankees get here with Dietz. I'm definitely the high guy on him. Kind of the question with Dietz is the durability. He basically missed the entirety of his first 2 seasons at Arkansas. Comes back in his junior year, kind of picks up right where he left off in high school ball. The question is how long does the durability hold up, considering the lack of mileage on his arm to this point and the injury history. And then the other thing is just the strike throwing. He did show improved strike throwing this year compared to what the expectation was, but there is still definitely room for improvement there. So the Yankees are a team that can get a guy to average command. With the stuff Dietz has, if he's getting to average command, I absolutely love the projection on him. The Phillies get Tyler Spangler at 36 overall, another one with excellent value. Another injured guy, missed, I think, the entirety of his season at De La Salle High School in California. Had the case to be the next best prep bat behind Grady Emerson coming into the season. The Phillies like these up-the-middle types. I think with Spangler available here, it was a no doubt that they were going to take him here at 36th overall. Daniel Jackson at 37th overall to the Rockies. Daniel Jackson was a big question mark, not because of talent by any means. I think it was just how far is a guy going to slide with the season he had? Golden Spikes Award, first catcher ever to go 2020 in the college ranks. Despite the swing and miss and the questions around his ability to stick behind the plate as a catcher, it's just like coming off of a season like that, how far are you going to let a guy slide with that track record of performance? He ends up with the Rockies at 37th overall. This pick annoyed me just a little bit because the first 3 picks in the draft were the only ones I got correct on my final mock draft. I had Daniel Jackson at 38th overall to the Rockies. He goes 37th overall to the Rockies. So I'm not sure I can take the credit for getting that pick right. They take Logan Redmond 37 or 38th overall. So they could have flipped those 2 picks just for me. It is what it is. Logan Redmond 38th overall, finished his season injured. Was able to come back and pitch at the draft combine, but this is an injury I do have some more pause with because it was like arm fatigue. Came back, the velocity, at the draft combine, the velocity wasn't what it was at in the regular season at UCLA. So some concern there. So I think that 38 ends up being a right range for him, considering he had some legitimate top 20 consideration when he was healthy. The Blue Jays at 39th overall, their first pick, they take Cole Carlone out of Arizona State, big left-handed flamethrower. Like that pick for them. And then rounding out the first round at 40th overall, Bo Lawrence, Christchurch Episcopal High School in South Carolina. I don't know if I'd say this is my favorite pick. I absolutely love this pick for the Dodgers. I think it's the funniest pick because I don't understand how they got him to this pick. The Dodgers have the smallest bonus pool. Their bonus pool is 3.95 million, so a little bit south of 4 million. The value of the 40th pick is 2.5 million. Bo Lawrence, I absolutely love Bo Lawrence. It is a silky smooth swing from the left side. He's 6'5", a ton of projection on the frame. He's already into some of the best power in this year's prep class. Despite the size, he plays a pretty darn good shortstop. He's going to move over to third base, which might end up being first base just because of the size and the power profile. But there's some legitimate athletic and defensive upside regardless of how big he is. This is a guy I would have considered as the next prep off the board behind Grady Emerson. With that being said, if I was a team drafting within the top 20 picks, Bo Lawrence is a player I would have heavily considered in that range. Let's just say he went 20th overall. That's where I had him ranked on my draft board. The 20th overall pick, that pick slot value is worth $4.37 million. The Dodgers' entire bonus pool is $3.95 million. And I know that I was not the only one that was that high on Bo Lawrence. And at the same time, I don't think that the Dodgers would waste their first round pick on a guy they weren't confident they were able to sign, considering I think they only have 6 picks within the top 10 rounds and 2 picks within the top 5 rounds. They have the first round pick and a 4th round pick. With that being said, I don't think that they would waste their first round pick on a guy they feel like they can't sign, because then if they can't sign him, then their 4th round pick ends up being the top pick in their draft class. And regardless of the fact that the Dodgers are essentially their big league success comes from their spending, they are still one of the best organizations when it comes to identifying and drafting talent. That's why they are in my opinion, the best run organization, really in all of sports, not even baseball, in all of sports, they are the best run organization. And so for Bo Lawrence to get to this pick at 40th overall is just so on brand for the Dodgers, because the Dodgers are always picking late and they always end up with one of the best draft classes. They always end up with the most top 100 prospects. I genuinely think that we are going to get a couple years down the road and look at this draft and think to ourselves, why did we let the Dodgers get Bo Lawrence at this pick? Now, with them having a smaller bonus pool and with them having only 2 picks within the top 5 rounds, I do think that they're going to be able to allocate a very large portion of their bonus pool to this pick. So I do think that they are going to be able to get him into pro ball and away from his college commitment. Like I said, I just think it's hilarious and on brand that we have allowed Bo Lawrence to this pick. And I put out a tweet made in jest, but the sentiment kind of still remains. Basically, what I said was that Bo Lawrence getting to the 40th overall pick to the Dodgers is more detrimental to the game of baseball than if they are to land Tarek Skubal at the trade deadline. It was more so said in jest, just because when people are talking about the Dodgers ruining the game of baseball, they just kind of fall back on the spending. They just completely ignore the fact that regardless of how much money they spend on their big league roster, they are still the best run organization in sports because of stuff like this, because of the little things like their late picks in the draft. So don't be surprised if Bo Lawrence ends up being the best player to come from this class. So that wraps up the first round. I do want to talk about one player that slid out of the first round that I kind of want to include in this conversation. Sawyer Strohsnyder gets to 66th overall to the Brewers. It was no secret that Strohsnyder had slid on draft boards. The bat-to-ball skills backed up at TCU this year. Struggled with left-handed pitching. I know it's a split camp on the swing. A lot of people are saying he's going to need a swing change at the next level. I still thought that the overall package was going to be good enough to get him into the first round. He's a plus runner. It's a plus arm. He's probably going to be in right field, but I still think he's going to be a plus defender in right field with the arm and the speed and the athleticism and the instincts. And then you add on the immense bat speed and raw power at the plate. I just didn't see him falling much further than the top 30 picks, and then he ends up all the way at 66 overall to the Brewers. It's kind of perplexing to me because you do talk about these players that slide a little bit and you say, oh, they have good value. Like Jacob Lombard, I would say, has very good value at 14th overall because he was projected more so in that 4 to 7 range. There does come a point where they slide far enough to where it's like, okay, now I'm a little concerned. Why have all of these teams with all of these picks passed on this player this deep into the draft? And that was kind of the case for me watching this unfold with Sawyer Strohsnyder. And then my doubts kind of were redeemed just a little bit because the Brewers picked him up. The Brewers, they identify and draft well, so for them to pick up Stroh and not be afraid of the risk that he comes with and take him here gives me a little less pause on projecting what he looks like in pro ball because of how far he's slid. I was just super surprised to see him fall that far, but I'm kind of glad that the Brewers pick him up because the Brewers, they develop well. They've also kind of valued these power bats. They took Andrew Fisher, who was a first baseman power bat, power over hit last year, which was kind of a surprise for me. And then they managed to land Stroh here. So I wanted to kind of include him in this kind of first round conversation in this portion of the video. From there, I do want to highlight some picks. I'm not going to go through every pick, but I am going to highlight some picks I like in the second, third, or fourth round. At 41st overall, the White Sox get Cole Prosek. This will actually give me a chance to talk about the White Sox draft class. This is one of the better day one classes I like. They get Landon Tomey with their second pick at 34th overall, Cole Prosek at 41st overall with their third pick. And then their third round pick at 77th overall is Joey Volchko. Their top four ends up being Cholowski, Tomey, Prosek, and Volchko. Obviously end up with the best overall player in the class. Then they get two very high upside prep bats. And then you add the stuff of Volchko. There is some legitimate reliever risk with Volchko, but you're getting some of the best stuff in the class coming off of that historic performance against Texas in Omaha. Hard to go wrong with this class that they've put together in Chicago. Really love that class. Aiden Ruiz at 44th overall to the Pirates. I have been the high guy on Aiden Ruiz throughout the entire cycle. I said at the beginning of this video, I completely revamped my draft board just a couple days out from the draft. One of the big changes I made on that was I pushed Aiden Ruiz all the way up to 15th overall on my draft board. This is the best value pick of the draft, in my opinion, getting Aiden Ruiz to the Pirates at 44th overall, considering just how high I was on him. Like I said with Jake Schaffner, you can't go wrong with a bat-to-ball shortstop. Aiden Ruiz, for me, has a much higher ceiling than Schaffner because he is the best defender in the class. There might be some more power on the way. It's borderline elite contact skills from both sides of the plate. I think this is excellent value here for the Pirates, getting him at 44th overall. This is another class I really enjoy. Derek Curiel, Aiden Ruiz. So you get two bat-to-ball artists there. And then Chris Rembert, kind of a high-floor college bat. And then Jason DeCaro was an interesting case coming into this class. One of the youngest college guys. I think he was only 20.2 on draft day, despite being a junior. Deep pitch mix, feel for spin, needs some mechanical tweaks. But I think he can end up being much better than what his pick says at 80th overall. Fan of the Pirates class. Ty Head at 46 overall to the Orioles. Another high value pick according to my board. I had Ty Head I think I had him 23rd overall on my draft board when it was all said and done. Gets to 46th overall to the Orioles here. The Orioles, another class I'm very in on. I really like the tools that they picked up in this on day one here. They get Eric Booth with their first pick. They get Ty Head with their second pick at 46th overall. You move down to the fourth round. They get Kevin Roberts Jr. 110th overall. Kevin Roberts Jr. was 35th on my draft board. So between Ty Head and Kevin Roberts Jr., they get some insane value here. The caveat there with Kevin Roberts is they're going to have to overslot him at that pick with his Florida commitment. Between Booth Jr. and Roberts Jr., they get some of the most exciting, loud tools in the class. You think about the speed on both of them. You think about the power upside. With Kevin Roberts, it's the immense physical projection coming in at 6'5", as probably a slam dunk center fielder with plus power. It's just about how much he's going to hit. And then Ty Head mixed in there as well. Borderline elite bat-to-ball skills, slam dunk center fielder, plus runner. Almost an Eric Booth Jr. that's further along in college ball, in a sense. Eric Booth Jr. definitely has a lot more power projection there. I definitely love the athleticism and the tools that the Orioles picked up in this class. The A's pick up Mason Edwards at 47th overall. After getting Drew Burress, which was the highest value pick in the top 10 for me, they take a string of three very solid pitchers here. Three very solid college pitchers. They get Mason Edwards at 47th overall, which for me personally felt like the range for him. I know that there was a lot of people saying, don't be surprised if we see Mason Edwards in the first round. He gets midway through the second round. Gabe Gackle at 73rd overall, their third pick. Gabe Gackle, I was lower on throughout the cycle. I moved him up late, not much higher. I think I got him into the 70s. Some of the best stuff in the class. He never really put it together at Arkansas. He was primarily pitching out of the bullpen there after he kind of failed as a starter. Had a hard time finding the strike zone, had a hard time navigating through lineups. But it's elite mechanics. He's getting to a very low release height. It's velocity, it's feel for spin. It's a unique look for hitters considering the release traits. And then Jacob Dudan at 83rd overall in the third round. Dudan has one of the best sliders in the class. The fastball is up into the upper 90s. That trio of pitchers there, Edwards, Gackle, and Dudan, is for me a very high ceiling trio of pitchers. Edwards maybe not the ceiling of a Gackle or a Dudan. The stuff is a tick lower than those two, but the strike throwing and the pitchability is better as well. I think the combination of those three is super exciting for the A's. So a big fan of that day one class. And then also they round out their day one with picking Roman Martin out of UCLA, 111th overall in the fourth round. Roman Martin, I was fairly high on. I think that the defensive upside alone, he was probably underrated a little bit as a defender because he played third base at UCLA this year. Had not been for Rock Chalowski, who was arguably the best defender in college baseball this year, Roman Martin would have been manning shortstop and would have been a legitimate shortstop prospect. And for that reason, the A's did in fact draft him as a shortstop, regardless of the fact that he played third base all year for UCLA. So a lot of defensive upside there. The bat, maybe not as much. There is a decent foundation of bat to ball and power there for him to be a decent bat in pro ball. So like that pick there for them as well. Connor Como at 54th overall to the Rangers. Connor Como was kind of in that, I wouldn't say he was in the same tier as Bo Lawrence, but kind of within that same range as Lawrence and maybe a Landon Tome, Cole Prosek. These very projectable left-handed prep hitters with power upside. Como, for me, drafted as a shortstop. He's not going to stick at shortstop. He might end up at first base in the long run. Not much athletic upside or defensive upside, but a very projectable 6'4" left-handed frame. And I've been on the record before stating that these prep left-handed hitters with good swings from the left side and power projection, I don't care what the defensive upside looks like. That's a player I want. One pick behind Como at 55th overall to the Giants is Caden Wechter. I absolutely love Caden Wechter. Really bought into the mechanics, it's super easy, repeatable, athletic delivery. I would say above average command for his age. The pitch mix is very polished. The fastball's been up to 97. There's legitimate feel for a changeup, legitimate feel for spin, multiple breaking balls in there. Absolutely love the profile of Caden Wechter. The Giants come away with a very intriguing group of pitchers in this day one group. It's Jackson Flora, it's Carson Bolemon, and then Caden Wechter. Those three alone are three of my favorite pitchers in this class. And then the fun pick here, I absolutely love this pick in the third round at 90th overall. They get Peyton Bonds out of Rutgers. Peyton Bonds was a late riser in this class, had a great draft combine performance. This is just such a fun pick just because obviously his uncle Barry Bonds, home run king, played for the Giants. So I wonder if that had any influence there, but do kind of like the value of Bonds there at 90th overall. Just immense power, athleticism, just, how much is he going to hit? Love that pick there at 90th overall to the Giants. Logan Schmidt gets to the Guardians at 59th overall. This was kind of a big question mark because supposedly he was asking for $5 million. Him and his camp were asking for $5 million. Had a strong commitment to LSU. He was probably the third or fourth best prep left-hander in this class, depending on how you stacked him up against Carson Bolemon and Brody Bumilla. I would say there's probably only two prep right-handers that had a case to be better than Logan Schmidt. So it was a big asking price. $5 million would have put him, for reference, the 16th overall pick was $5 million. So that's kind of the range you're talking about for Schmidt. He gets to 59th overall, so that's going to be a significant overslot for the Guardians. The Guardians come away with two big-time pitchers with their first two picks, Liam Peterson at 19th overall and then Logan Schmidt here at 59th overall. Two arms with significant upside there. So really like the top of that class for the Guardians. They get Trey Broussard at 95th overall. This is a speed defense guy with some contact skills. That's kind of the range that those types of guys end up going. And then Cade Lewis at 123rd overall in the fourth round Cade Lewis, he didn't make it onto my draft board, but Lewis, he was a guy that was on my radar really throughout the season. He was drafted as a third baseman. He's probably gonna be a first baseman at the pro level, but a bat that I was really bought into, a really healthy blend of contact and power there. Guardians are another class I'm a fan of. I got to be careful with saying how many classes I'm a fan of, just because if I say everybody's my favorite draft class, then it doesn't really mean anything. I mean, this just kind of goes to show just how much I did enjoy this class. I'm looking at all of these day one hauls, and I really like what I'm seeing from a lot of these teams. Sean Duncan at 63rd overall to the Yankees. They go back to back in terms of left-handed pitchers. Sean Duncan is from the prep ranks. Also, just recently, I don't know if he underwent Tommy John surgery yet, but at least it wasn't that long ago that the news came out that he would need Tommy John. This was kind of the range I ranked him in because of that. Prior to the injury, he did have legitimate first round upside. If the Yankees can get him healthy, I do like the value with this pick here. So it's Hunter Dietz and Sean Duncan with their first two picks. Hard to go wrong with those two lefties there. The Red Sox get Owen Hull at 67th overall, so they go back to the well in North Carolina, back-to-back Tar Heels with their first two picks, Jake Schaffner and Owen Hull. Don't hate that at all for the Red Sox. The Cubs get Miles Bailey at 75th overall. Miles Bailey was a big-time question mark. I mean, prior to him going down with an ankle injury that ended his season prematurely at FSU, he was already a big question mark just because it is the best raw power in the class, but there's some of the most swing and miss in the class as well. So he definitely had a very wide range of outcomes in this draft, and then you added on the fact that he missed the second half of his season with the broken ankle. It was an interesting case to see where Miles Bailey might land, ends up at 75th overall to the Cubs. I think there's more upside than he's given credit for. He did show some really excellent swing decisions prior to the injury, it was kind of like if he is going to swing and miss as much as he did in his freshman year, he's going to have to clean up the swing decisions to get the most out of his power. And he did that here in the sophomore year. If that trend continues into pro ball, we could be talking about the best power hitter to come from this class. Ethan Washman gets to 79th overall to the Twins. Ethan Washman was my highest ranked prep right-hander. There were probably 10 different names up for consideration when it came to who was the top prep right-hander in the class. It came down to Ethan Washman for me, and I had him ranked 17th overall on my draft board. I think I said that Aiden Ruiz at 44th overall was the best value in the class. It's actually Ethan Washman at 79th overall. I guess it does kind of come down to the signing bonuses for both of those players. Signing bonuses aside, Washman was a player I ranked 17th in the class. He gets to 79th overall. I've been on here saying that he's essentially a Seth Hernandez light. It's the same type of package. It's the same type of fluid delivery and athleticism. It's the same type of velocity, feel for spin in there, feel for a changeup. Maybe not quite the strike throwing of a Seth Hernandez, maybe not quite the physical projection, but the framework is there. Super excited to see his development path in the Twin system. Braves get Jensen Hirschkorn at 84th overall. This was kind of the range for him, but this was another considerably high upside prep right-hander. They land a few of them on day one, so they get their college bats with AJ Gracia and Carter Beck with their first two picks. Both of those picks are probably going to be money savers, which they're going to allocate towards these two picks between Caden McCarthy and Jensen Hirschkorn. They get McCarthy 48th overall out of Vermont, and then Hirschkorn out of California. With every mock draft, I kind of mentioned the Braves lean towards prep pitchers and the fact that they're not afraid to select from that demographic. So I had a hard time seeing them leaving day one without one of these prep arms, and they get two of them. Considerably high upside for both of these pitchers, considering the projection and the already present feel for stuff there. Caden Ferraro gets to 86th overall to the Cardinals in the third round out of Texas Tech. Ferraro was undoubtedly the most underrated bat in this class. Had some of the best metrics in terms of contact and power in this year's college class. It really just came down to the track record. He spent 2 years in JUCO ball, gets to Texas Tech. The stat line doesn't necessarily match the metrics, so I can kind of see how he slid as far as he did. I think the Cardinals got an excellent bat there at very good value as well. The Cardinals class is another one that I'm really bought into. I mean, Trevor Condon with your first pick, Tegan Kuhns, Rocco Maniscalco, I haven't even touched on him yet. And if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I was really high on Maniscalco as well. Andrew Williamson, big power bat at UCF. Dawson Montesa, starter out of West Virginia, performed late into the season in the NCAA tournament and at the College World Series. Caden Ferraro here, and then D. Kennedy, high floor shortstop out of Kansas State. They get 7 picks on day one. I don't really think that they missed on any of these picks. So the Cardinals really come away with a good haul on day one. Brody Bumilla, 89th overall to the Rangers. He was probably the biggest question mark in this draft prior to the news that it's pretty likely there's going to be another arm surgery in there on top of the one he already had. He already had UCL surgery on his elbow, I want to say 2 years ago. Might be going under the knife for a second time before he even reaches pro ball or college ball, whichever route he goes. Prior to the news of this injury, he was already one of the higher risk prep arms in the draft just because the prior injury history and the fact that there wasn't much feel for secondaries outside of his high-powered fastball, which was borderline 80 grade. The velocity did kind of back up on him late into the season in Massachusetts. The strike throwing, there's not super present feel for the strike throwing yet. And then you add on the fact that he's 6'9", and it's pretty difficult to get these unicorn lefties to average command. But the upside is obvious considering the athleticism and the projection on the 6'9" frame. So then you add on the injury, and I had no idea where Bumilla was landing in this draft. The Rangers are the team to take the shot on him here at 89th overall. Now, does he sign with the Rangers? I'd probably say that's 50-50 on whether or not he signs with the Rangers or goes to Texas for college ball. I would imagine it's a pretty high asking price, and the Rangers might not see eye to eye on that considering the injury, considering they're going to have to rehab him. So I think there's a good chance that Bumilla is the highest drafted player to not sign. So that will be a very close follow of mine leading up to the signing deadline. Kind of rounding out these day one picks that I wanted to mention. You got Will Brick at 131st overall in the 4th round to the Blue Jays. Depending on if you view Cole Prosek as a catcher or a shortstop. If you view Prosek as a shortstop, then Will Brick is the best high school catcher in the class. And regardless of the risk of a high school catcher, regardless of the volatility of a high school catcher, I think getting the best high school catcher at 131st overall is pretty good value there. It's probably going to be an overslot deal because of that. And the Blue Jays don't have a ton of money to spend. So I'm interested to see just how much money they plan on signing him to. You're talking about probably elite defense from behind the plate. And then there's a lot of power upside as well, and some polished bat-to-ball skills. Interested to see what the signing bonus looks like for him. So that rounds out the players I wanted to talk about that were drafted on day one. There's a significant amount of players still available on the board that are pretty highly ranked. I don't think we've seen this amount of like top 100 draft prospects still available after day one. Here's the list for me in terms of top 100 guys still available after day one. And then I'll give you my ranking of them. And then for these high school guys, their college commitment as well. So Cooper Sides at 27, he's an LSU commit. Blake Bowen at 31, he's an Oregon State commit. Bo Holloway at 44, Vanderbilt commit. Joseph Contreras, 51, another Vanderbilt commit. Cole Kenninger, 58, Tennessee commit. Archer Horn, 62nd, Stanford commit. Martin Sheeler, 72, Mississippi State commit. Ethan Bass, 77, Wake Forest commit. Jackson Willits comes in at 79 as my highest ranked college guy still available. James Tronstein, 81, another Vanderbilt commit. Brady Harris, 82, Florida commit. Alex Hernandez, 86 out of Georgia Tech, my second highest ranked college guy still available. Javorsky Lane Jr., 88 to Arkansas. Denton Lord, 89, Mississippi State commit. Lucas Moore out of Louisville, 96 on my board. And then Savion Sims, 97, Oklahoma commit. The majority of these guys are high school guys. They haven't been passed up because of the talent. They've been passed up because of the asking price to get them away from their college commitment. You'll typically see a few of these guys slide because teams aren't willing to dish out the signing bonus that they're looking for. I just don't think that we've seen this amount of guys get passed up on. I would imagine that the asking prices are higher than they've ever been, considering the NIL at college. There's a much greater incentive for them to go to college. So of course the asking price is going to be higher for them to get to pro ball. I'm really interested to see how many of those guys do in fact get to pro ball, how much get into campus. I mean, you look at that Vanderbilt class, Joseph Contreras, Bo Holloway, and then James Tronstein. I would imagine at least one of those guys getting to campus from that group. Cooper Sides is my highest ranked draft prospect, still available at 27 to LSU. There's a good shot he's getting to LSU at this point. And then Dominic Santorelli, not featured on this list. He's right outside my top 100. Another LSU commit. I talked about this in my draft combine video, I think it was, when I was talking about Santorelli and his performance there, is that I think that there's a pretty good shot he's getting to campus, and after day one, that seems pretty more apparent that there's a good shot at that seeing Santorelli get to Baton Rouge. Tennessee, you get Cole Kenninger here, Sean Dunlap, high school catcher right outside my top 100, another Tennessee commit. Really interested to see where these guys land. With them sliding, it's not a matter of, okay, these are going to be the first guys off the board on day two. I mean, we could see these guys get drafted in the 20th round, but when they sign, they're going to get signed for second round, third round, maybe even first round money. Where these guys end up isn't going to be a depiction of the talent. This is a matter of where you got to look at the signing bonus, see how it stacks up with guys drafted higher up in the draft. So when we talk about teams saving money with their first round pick, it's for guys like these that are going to require more money to get to pro ball. This is where the financials come in and how you're allocating your money within these draft classes. We'll see how many of those guys go on day two. With that being said, that is going to close out pretty much what I want to talk about for day one. Got 15 rounds tomorrow. I don't know how much I'll be tuned into, but I will still be doing, whether it be a video or an article. I do have an article for day one. Go check that out. It's linked below. I will have some sort of coverage, whether it's a video coming on here to talk about the picks or putting out an article. So stay tuned for that, and then I'll have more additional post-draft coverage. We'll be updating my organizational prospect lists and then also my top 50 prospect board. I have that. Go check that out. I'm planning on extending that to 100 players. So a lot of these guys that were drafted on day one will end up on that list. And then they'll, of course, end up on the organizational top 10 prospect list. That will be all a part of my post-draft coverage. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Subscribe to be notified. Go check out the website, the TikTok, the Instagram. I'll have all that linked below. Check out all of that. Until next time, thank you for tuning in.